why don't we just go ahead and get into the actual X's and O's of the game and break down this matchup. So we'll go back to you, Emmy. Let's go Rams offense against Bengals defense first. What do you think are the keys?
Well, to me, it all starts with getting pressure on Matthew Stafford, preferably with the front four. We've seen it throughout their playoff run with the Rams. They've been able to protect Matthew Stafford, and because of that, he's been more comfortable in the pocket and been able to be more accurate and more consistent than he was during the regular season. So as a pocket passer, as a guy who's in his early 30s and not as mobile as he used to be, a big key is going to be rushing up the middle, specifically getting pressure in his face so that Trey Hendrickson and the guys on the outside, Sam Hubbard, can go and finish the job. Another thing is Matthew Stafford can't make the big mistake. We saw in the NFC Championship game, he threw that duck to Jaquiski Tart. Sorry. I mean, that's putting it lightly. I mean, he just threw it up there and it was right in his hands. It's like almost like a punt. So those kind of mistakes, we've seen that the Bengals take advantage over and over again. So he's going to have to be extra careful with the football because we've seen what the Rams defense can do. So you can't give Joe Burrow a short field. You have to make him drive the length of the field. And part of that is not turning the ball over offensively.
Exactly. Thompson, what do you think?
I feel like we also need to give credit to the Bengals secondary. So I'd say after watching the Bengals and Titans play a few weeks ago, the Bengals made Ryan Tannehill look silly through 3 interceptions. I'm not saying Ryan Tannehill is a great quarterback by any means, but he looked silly against the Bengals. Von Bell, Jesse Bates just kind of, I wouldn't say they shut down Patrick Mahomes, but they definitely did what was needed against the Chiefs to win that game. So I'd say like we can't just ignore the Bengals secondary here. Another point that you kind of brought up was looking at Bengals defensive line. So Sam Hubbard, Trey Hendrickson, and BJ Hill have combined for 7 sacks in the past 3 games. And I think that can be one of the keys to success when playing against Matthew Stafford and the Rams, especially with Cooper Kupp. He's just elite, which I hate to say as a Seahawks fan. So getting pressure on Matthew Stafford so he doesn't have time to throw to Cooper Kupp is one of the keys to the game.
I'm going to build off sort of what Emmy said. I think when we're looking at it from a Rams offense against Bengals defense perspective, turnover battle is going to be ultimately, I think, the great equalizer in this game. And it has been for the Cincinnati Bengals throughout the entire postseason. If you look at what they've done so far this postseason, they forced 7 total turnovers in the 3 games, and they're +5 in turnover differential. In a lot of these games, in fact, in most of their games this season, I would argue, especially in these playoffs, they've had probably the weaker roster in a lot of them. But since they have the great quarterback and they've been an opportunistic defense all season long, forcing turnovers on, I think it's 14.7% of opponents' offensive possessions and winning the turnover battle, creating short fields for an explosive offense. You're right. Matthew Stafford can't make that mistake. And when he hasn't made that mistake this season, the Rams have been great. They're undefeated, 8-0 in games where he does not throw an interception. So if he can take care of the ball, make smart throws late in the game, not make that big mistake, especially when we're in their own territory, and if they can take some pressure off him with the running game, which hasn't been great at times, they've been a mediocre team this season. I know they just got back Cam Akers and they're getting healthy. They've gotten healthy the past couple of weeks. But I ultimately think not turning the ball over, as we've seen, they're successful when he doesn't. running the football, taking a little bit of the pressure off Matthew Stafford, running the ball effectively. They're only averaging 2.9 yards per carry this postseason. I think it's going to need to be a little bit better than that in this game if they want to win. I do think that if this is a game where Joe Burrow throws 30 plus times and Matthew Stafford throws 30 plus times, I do think I'd probably give the edge to the Bengals with their receivers and their weapons and just the way Joe Burrow has been playing these games. So I think running the ball effectively, more effectively than they have been, and not turning the ball over will be critical for the Rams to win this game.
Right. And before we move on, I just want to ask y'all something. We've seen Cooper Kupp all season roast teams in pretty much any type of coverage. But if you're the Bengals, what do you think is the best way to disrupt Cooper Kupp?
Thompson, you want to take this one first?
Yeah, so I would say, so I've watched Cooper Kupp a pretty good amount this year, just watching the NFC West, just kind of seeing the competition going on all year. I would say kind of the best way to disrupt Cooper Kupp, he's an unstoppable receiver. There's nothing you really can do to stop him. There's something you can do to stop Matthew Stafford. I don't see Matthew Stafford as more than a game manager, to be honest, which could be a controversial take, but I see him as a game manager. I wouldn't say he's elite by any means, but I say kind of just disrupting Matthew Stafford at the line of scrimmage, putting pressure on him, forcing him to make bad decisions, which we can see him once he makes one bad decision, it's pretty hard for him to bounce back. So just forcing Stafford to make bad decisions in the pocket by putting pressure on him. And we know that the Bengals defensive line can do this.
It's so hard to stop a player like Cooper Kupp. He has incredible timing. He knows when to get open. McVay and this offensive staff move him around so much. So it's hard to really bracket him or, double team him. And he just knows he's a great route runner. He knows how to get open. He has that timing and that chemistry already developed with Matthew Stafford. But what I will say is what we have seen this postseason from the Bengals defense, especially once they're able to adjust, it's been a little shaky at times early in games, but once they're able to make adjustments, which have been great, they've been playing a lot of disguised zone coverages, playing on the defensive front, dropping 7 or 8 back into coverage. So I think if you're the Bengals defensively, do what you've been doing the past couple weeks, especially last week against Kansas City. If you can do some of those things, and maybe a couple pre-snap disguises, some zone blitz type things, that would be my strategy because it's what's worked for them in the past. But I think you're not going to, I think in games where he has 125 plus receiving yards, the Rams are undefeated or pretty damn close. So if you can just keep him under that 125-yard threshold, which I think is doable, it's not a huge ask, then I think they'll have a good shot.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of it, which both of y'all said. But, as you said, they move him around so much, it's hard to really get a feel for what he's doing and what route tree he has available to him because he's in motion all the time. So with that, we can go ahead and move on to the